God damn it.
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Take the truth. I'll set you free.
Good, man. How you doing?
Good. I just was lost in NFT world in Clubhouse. Are you part of that?
Oh, man. Yeah, kind of. It's like, you know what? The Clubhouse thing is kind of weird, though. It's like, how many other things do I have to join? And it's like, I did start doing the NFT thing. I dipped my toes into it. I'm a part of a drop that I'm not sure what's happening now. I made a little bit of money, but not crazy. And everyone's like, you got to be on the Clubhouse thing. And I got on Clubhouse and I listened to some of these conversations. I've been invited to be part of them, but it's sort of like, dude, I don't want to listen to some weird people I don't know all day talking about stuff. I don't know, man. It gets tiring. It's like, but I mean, I guess that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, like, you'll hear little gems here and there or something like, oh, you should do this, or, you know, make sure you put your toilet paper upside down, or I don't know. I don't know what to think about it.
Well, the best one I've heard was one where I just got invited to listen to one about a week ago that was the heavy hitters, like Beeple and those guys. And so that was more interesting because it was like, it wasn't just some kids hanging around who, you know, are doing okay with the thing. I mean, it was the players.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it was nice to see how people on that scale are still regular people. You know,
I haven't heard any of those yet. I've mostly just I've seen NFT conversation, and I'll like check it out. And it's just like a bunch of like computer nerds just arguing about things. And to be honest, a lot of it goes over my head because I'm still trying to understand this whole NFT thing. But some of the conversations, I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? Like, this is so weird, man.
And you know what? It's better to be active instead of listening.
Yeah.
Just jump right in the conversation and say, you know, I'm new to this and I'm this and I'm that. And when they find out who you are, they're going to be really reverential to you, and they'll answer your questions. You know, it's like, I don't understand how this works. And they'll recommend, oh, well, you should try this site.
Yeah.
This here, you do that. They'll help you. That's the idea, you know.
I think my real issue with it so far is I haven't had the time to like, I don't have, it's like one more thing. And I'm like,
I feel you.
Oh, dude. But anyways, let me just do an intro real quick because just, you know, we're getting started. It's fine. But hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Face the Truth. I'm looking forward to talking with William Wray. I've been a fan of his for a long time and really love his paintings and his history in the art world with illustration and publication and the animation world, and one of the most, in my opinion, exciting plein air painters, and really inspired and pushed me when I was like years ago to like try to push my color more and be a little bit more adventurous. So anyways, I'm looking forward to talking with him. Everyone, please welcome William Wray. So thank you again for joining me for this, man. I've you know, it's funny. I've ever since I started this podcast, I've had like a list of artists that before I started doing this, that I gotta have this guy on. And you were like in that list for quite a while, and I'm glad we finally got this to work out. So.
Yeah, well, I'm privileged that you asked me to do it, and I know you know everybody, so I figured if I get asked, I'll have to wait a while. So my time has come.
Well, man, no, it's awesome because, you know, this whole thing is just such a great thing. I think for me personally, like if I'm going to be selfish about it, I get to talk with awesome artists, you know, and let people in on my private conversations. But
your painting of the parrot my parrot you did for me still hangs in a
oh sweet
place.
That's awesome.
I only have the painting now. My ex and I are departed. So Actually, the painting was for her. So I'm saying we had this big screaming fight where I just said, "You got the parrot. I'm taking the painting."
Oh my gosh.
She couldn't argue with that. I mean, your painting's great, but she's got the actual live creature she's in love with. So, anyway.
Mookie, right?
But I love Mookie. But I love that painting. It's a beauty.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Yeah, I miss. I haven't gotten to do too many like traditional paintings for a while because I've been just busy with, the digital deadlines and stuff. But that was a lot of fun to do that painting. That was pretty cool.
Well, you can tell because I was doing it for a while. I would just it was the go-to present for the girlfriend for birthdays or whatever, Christmas.
Yeah.
And some people will kill themselves, and other people will just give you this little quickie thing because they're not into it. You're not one of those kind of artists. You took it seriously. It's a beautiful thing.
I try to, man. I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to do if we want to actually?
Well,
succeed?
sure. Well, and you like to think that a fellow artist that when there's a mutual admiration thing going on, that they're going to try a little harder,
Yeah, you know what? To be honest, too, I'm a fan of your work, and you commission me to do a painting of your bird. I'm like, I gotta do an awesome painting here. But I mean, that's what I always try to do, anyways. But there is that little extra pressure, right, man, because so. It's I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday. I've been getting into doing stand-up and stuff, and it was going really well just before the pandemic, and I was going out a few nights a week, and my material was building, and my confidence. And I was talking to her about that because I'm about to start again. Things are opening up, and I might get to go actually this Wednesday for the first time since last March, a year ago.
Wow!
So I'm excited but nervous, and I was telling her it's way easier for me to go up in front of a group of just regular people and do my material. But what's hard is when you're doing comedy, you have to do a lot of open mics with a room full of bastards, like a bunch of comics who, they know, oh, here's a setup, here's the punchline, here's this, and they're sitting there like this, and you're trying to do your material, but they're bored because they've heard every single thing, and it's really hard to get a room full of comics to laugh. And there's some regular people there, but the thing is the confidence it takes, it's really challenging, and you're up there in the mind fuck that's going on because you're trying to do your material, but you're just thinking they're judging every little pause, every little thing I'm doing, and it's really nerve-wracking. So that same feeling, like when you're doing a painting, like when I did a painting for you, that's kind of how it feels. Yeah. Is he gonna think this is the lamest painting ever? Is he gonna be like why did he do this, or because that's how it felt. That because normally I don't do commissions for other artists or artists that I respect, so that definitely was a part of it.
It's funny you mentioned stand-up. I've just been listening to Craig Ferguson's autobiography.
Oh.
And he got around that by being drunk for the first 20 years of doing it.
I don't know how people can do that.
And he actually figured out he was a better comedian sober.
Man.
That's how he had his confidence. Also, and he was an alcoholic, but
Yeah. I don't know
that
how
only
you
takes
do that.
it so far.
Yeah, I always get nervous. Just before I do it, I usually I might have a glass of wine just to kind of,
sure.
But that's about it, because I don't want to. I'm I work hard on it. I want to make sure I remember my material and all that stuff, and it's like a performance. But I've seen plenty of people that go up and they're just wasted, and I'm like, are they laughing at you because you're funny or because you're so drunk?
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's a whole different art form that I'm trying to figure out.
I think you can be funny while you're drunk.
It is funny.
But I think you probably are going to be funnier when you've honed your stuff when you're straight.
Yeah. Oh, are you there? I lost your image.
Yeah, you know what? All of a sudden I'm low power. I got to plug back in.
Oh, okay.
So Hopefully
But
you'll still hear me.
oh yeah, I can hear you.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely it's a fun art form, doing comedy stuff, because you're involving like the writing and performing. You have to remember everything, and it's a challenge, and I really like it. And also forces you have to to go out in front of people, and there's a lot about it that you just feel so vulnerable. But I think that's kind of what I like, is I feel like it grounds me a little bit. Like I just
Yeah.
feel like, I don't know, man. It's really intimidating, and like and then when right before they're about to call your name, and you go up there, and it's just like, oh shit, here we go. You just gotta go for it. And it's the worst though when you say something and there's just nothing. You're like, oh, what the
I
heck?
envy you because that was something I kind of considered, because I've taken comedy writing classes and I do writing in animation,
Yeah.
but once you're writing comedy, that's always something that could be a possible option. And I'm comfortable in front of groups when I do live, things at a museum where I'm just talking about my work or whatever, or make a presentation. I never sweat it.
Yeah.
But I've come to realize that I can write a certain kind of comedy, but I don't think I could go up there and create that sort of character comedian persona,
Yeah,
like
I don't do that.
like a Stephen Wright. You just say funny things. What do you do?
Yeah. I just talk like how I talk. And I don't try to be anybody except for me. And like I'll have a setup and a punchline. But I try to just talk normal, and and every single thing I talk about is real. It's like real things that have happened, or just thoughts that come into my mind that I'm like, this is funny. And
truth is always the best comedy.
Yeah. And I also say things I know that are going to piss people off, but I say it anyways because it needs to be said.
I don't think you can be funny without pissing off half the people.
Yeah,
because
it happens almost every
we're in a world that's very polarized.
Don't talk about my Jesus. Don't talk about my Jesus. Jesus masturbating jokes are the best jokes, by the way. So
well, it was a divine kind of masturbation, or what's the word? Immaculate.
Yeah.
He didn't have to touch himself.
Yeah. It's just like, whoa. Yeah, I actually
it's just thought power,
I actually had a thought one day. Like I was thinking about the word glory hole. And I was just like, why do they call it glory hole? And then I just thought about the word glory, and it just made me think about religion and Jesus. And then I came up with a whole bit where the punchline is at the very end is like, where do you think the term glory hole came from? Just that thought gave me a whole setup. And it's always like half the crowd loves it and half the crowd is like, not cool, man. But I enjoy it, man. It makes me laugh. So
I enjoy my penis in a mouth too. That is a form of glory. I mean,
yeah.
When you think of it, it's like the ultimate kind of worship.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite religious. It's quite a religious experience.
Yeah.
And you're the little tin god.
Yeah, exactly. So. As much as I love talking about penises and Jesus, I wanted to talk about, because I know a lot about your work, or at least like, what I like about it, and there's a lot more to it. But I'm curious about how you got started, because, I'm familiar with you from years ago. I didn't even know it was you. I found out it was you later, but of course, work that you did on Ren and Stimpy, like. Some of those, like you did like some of those like close-up detail paintings and different things like that. Am I correct? Or I remember seeing something you've done, like some of those paintings, and I thought it was so interesting how, like, I mean, those images were things that stuck with me for years, just because
you are not alone, my friend.
It was so different. And of course I never knew who did it, and was, like I said, years later that I found out you did a lot of those things. But then you also did a lot of work for Mad Magazine. And there's a bunch of stuff that you did, I'm just curious, like what was the first thing that you did that got you started? Because then you go from all that stuff to you know, the whole different, because I knew you, I guess, from as Bill Wray, you know, when with Mad Magazine and different things, but then all of a sudden it was William Wray, and you're doing these kick-ass like urban plein air paintings that I never saw anybody doing plein air paintings like that before. Like, it was just like, whoa, what is going on here? So I'm just curious, like, where it started and what you first were into and kind of what led you into the other stuff, or what you currently do.
Well, I'm sure when you were young, you drew all the time, right?
Oh yeah, it's never stopped.
Well, yeah, it never stopped for me either. And I'm fond of saying that when my mother passed away 2 years ago, I found a trunk of my old watercolor paintings when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I was a better abstract artist then than I am now. You know, it's like, so I kind of just started out having the ability. They say that it's all work and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's all work for learning anatomy and drawing realistically, particularly when you're doing it out of your head. We all have a knack for looking at a photo and copying, even when we're young, when we're you know, an artist type, or even most people have it if they want to develop it. But as to what, I just always was going to be an artist. Both my parents were artists, but they were unfulfilled. They did real jobs, or in my mother's case, she mostly was a housewife, but my dad was military, but military intelligence, but he always kept his drawing up as kind of his hobby.
Yeah.
And he was gone a lot. So it's not like he was in direct influence. It was more like the loneliness of being without a dad, so to speak, even though I had one, and just a mommy's boy with a little sister, but too young for me to relate to. So I just lost myself in drawing and reading comic books and copying them and stuff like that. Yeah. Not an unusual way to get into it. And then I got involved in comic book fandom and started doing little covers for newsletters and stuff like that, of like embarrassing swipes of, you know, Jack Kirby or whatever. Yeah. And then I would make expeditions to meet those guys like Kirby. And I actually at 15, I visited Alex Toth and just go, I want to do comics. But then I was also at the exact same time fascinated with animation and loved Warner Brothers cartoons. You know, we love all the shit we love. And so one day I answered an ad in the paper. I was living in Southern California in Newport Beach. And there was this guy who wanted to do animated movies. He didn't know what he was getting into, and he never made an animated movie, but he'd made a lot of money doing industrial films. And he just hired me at 15 to be taught by an old Disney animator who was retired, who was looking for some extra money on how to do simple animation. And we started working on his industrial films. And then he had these plans for doing this feature film. Of all things, he wanted it to be, he was altruistic. He wanted to do an anti-smoking feature film. And that never went anywhere. But for a little while, I got some good training. And then I would ask, he recommended me for a job at Hanna-Barbera later, but it kind of all blends together. But by the time I got to a JC to improve my drawing, before that, I had done little bits of comic book work here and there, usually as an assistant or something like that, with so many different situations. I don't want to bore you with all of it, but a little bit of time at Disney, right. A little bit of time for assisting the guy who did the Tarzan strip back in the late 70s. So each thing would be a little bit of an education. Then I got a job at Filmation when they were just doing the last of Fat Albert, and we were doing stuff like Flash Gordon and Heckle and Jekyll and garbage like that.
Now, is this like is this all like self-taught? Like you just were just doing your art, and then like certain doors would open, you just go through it, and it just one thing leads to another kind of a thing?
I would just lie and say, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, that's kind of like, that's what I did.
I had a fairly okay portfolio, and you just apply for a job when they have a bunch of work that needs to get done. And when it's a hack house like Filmation was, everybody was an alcoholic there, just barely doing work that functioned half the time. They just wanted you to trace shit, you know?
Yeah.
and just put it in order for them so the animators could fake it too. That's why those Saturday morning cartoons were such garbage. You know, it was all done by drunk people who were talented but didn't fucking care.
Yeah,
you know?
that's crazy.
And then the guy who do the model sheets is one of the least interesting artists there, and you have to trace his work. You know, so it's all this big soul tapping, horrible thing that the 70s had devolved into. That's what the animation world had devolved into. So I was hanging around with my best friend was this John Kay guy who we ended up creating Ren and Stimpy, not really me, but I was there for it and contributed a little bit. And that stuff was one of the many ideas we had. We were trying to sell for years when there was cable television was barely started and we couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I just said, after the disappointment of my JC, which was all the teachers would say, what do you want to learn how to draw for? Put a television in the sandbox. Fuck that shit. Drawing's done, because conceptual art ruled.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, lost in time. I would bring in like a book on Frazetta. The Ballantine books kind of saved my life. You know, the Frazetta book, and the Leindecker book came out, and I'm like showing them to teachers, and they're just laughing at me like, this is illustration. What do you want to do this for? Yeah. And literally when I was at the JC, the only class that taught me anything was the hand lettering class. So at least if I was starving, I could letter signs on fruit stands at the grocery store, you know, but I was able to use it for comic book lettering later.
Yeah.
You know? And it takes us, it's a skill, you know? So I'm actually practicing something that relates to the part of the brain that's going to teach you to draw. So that was it. The lettering class I loved. But working on He-Man, Masters of the Universe, that kind of shit, I was like, I'm going nowhere. I'm not learning anything from here anymore. So I went to the Art Students League in New York because it's the only one school I could afford. And because classes were like $28 per month for a 2-hour class. It was really reasonable.
Yeah.
And you had some great old illustrators there, not the very best, but pretty good. And so I learned how to draw and paint better. But it's all self-taught in the end, you know. Once you get the fundamentals of how to learn, so to speak. And I just kept doing work in the animation business and work in the comic book business. I was really doing well in comic book business as an inker. For the listeners who don't know what an inker is, it's a person who specializes in the ink line. And to describe it, you can say there's another guy who does the drawing, and you're tracing it, but you're not really tracing it theoretically. You're supposed to be enhancing it, supporting it, making it better if you can, but also not changing his style too much or her style. And I couldn't draw that well, but I could ink really pretty good, a little bit stiff. But my best friend in that business was Dave Stevens. I don't know if you know that name.
I'm not sure.
Disney made a movie of his stuff called The Rocketeer. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
It was a bit of a failure, but on their standards. But he inked in this really beautiful, super realistic way, in a very old-fashioned way. And we were friends, and that's the way I worked. So I was always able to get work. And then I got into coloring because back before they invented computer color, there was a couple-year stage where the coloring was hand painted on these more deluxe projects. And I did this book called The Cult over Bernie Wrightson, which was one of the most amazing things that ever happened to me. But he was supposed to paint it and dropped out. We did this process called blue lines. And basically what that was, they take the ink drawing and they print it in light blue on illustration board. And then they print the ink drawing on a clear acetate over the top. And so you paint on the illustration board, and then you have the hard black line over the top of it. So it's like comic books that are fully painted but still held together by a line.
Yeah.
And that
interesting.
That lasted for about 5 years, and I was kind of doing pretty well with that, because you could hire an assistant and get them on an airbrush or putting in flat colors, and I'd come in with the airbrush or whatever and just make a Bernie Wrightson page look pretty darn good in about 2 hours. And so I could do 5.
So you lift up plastic and put it just to check and everything, and then you just
Yeah,
kinda,
you can see right through it, but when it prints, the black is nice and crisp. If you paint over an original, particularly back then, it would often the line would look muddy, and even if you use transparent colors, because I use mostly Dr. Martens for that stuff.
Yeah.
But some gouache, and that was really interesting to meet Bernie. You're familiar with his work, right?
Bernie
Wrightson.
I'm probably familiar with the work. I'm terrible with names sometimes.
Oh my God, he's such a giant. But you're not a comic book guy. I can see that.
I grew up on comics and drawing them like crazy, but not.
Do you remember Swamp Thing?
Yeah.
Swamp Thing. He's the co-creator of Swamp Thing.
Oh, okay.
And he's the first guy. He did the first 10 issues, and he was known for having the ultimate horror style. Oh, okay. Beautiful inking, and he's also done a illustrated version of Frankenstein. That's one of the most beautiful things ever done. He looked at all the old illustrators like Frazetta and Franklin Booth. I don't know if you know his work, and synthesized that into his own beautiful pen and ink and brush style. And now one of his plates for Frankenstein just sold for $100,000, I think. I mean, he's the number one horror artist of the 70s, 80s. But that's just early enough to be out of your, growing up zone.
Well, I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of the way that work looks like, and similar with like Basil Gogos and like that kind of, like, I love that kind of stuff. But as far as the comic books and stuff, I mean, I didn't really. It's funny, when I was in high school, I was obsessed with comics. Like, I would just draw. I would get a comic book and I would draw like every page in the whole thing, and I'd ink them. And I remember one time my dad came up to me and he's and I would do like this. I would ink like I would draw and ink a whole Spider-Man page, and then I'd sign the bottom, Seiler or whatever. My dad would be like, "No, you can't put your name down there. That's you got to put like, after so and so." And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I should like that." That's when I started kind of paying attention to the artists' names. I started like noticing different artists, but like I didn't really even think about that. I was just drawing, like.
Isn't that a weird sensation when you're looking at art and you have that day as a child where you go, "Oh, somebody drew this."
Yeah.
Before that, you just think it's just somehow magic, or just.
Well, I mean, I knew someone drew it. I just didn't pay attention to like,
I'm talking about a bit before that when you're really young.
Yeah.
Somebody drew this Donald Duck comic.
Yeah.
I first noticed it in Mad Magazine, where the Wally. I don't know if you know who Wally Wood is.
Yeah.
But he's the original great Mad artist, and he did a Superman parody where he drew a little picture of himself, and said, "When comics are drawn better, they're drawn by Wally Wood." And I just was like, "Oh." So he became de facto my first favorite comic book artist because I actually knew who he was, so to speak. I forget what I was.
Well, I used to. When I started getting into Mad Magazine, that's when I really started having like art heroes and started like collecting. I would get every issue I could, but I mean, like, like this is like Norman Ringo and like Richard Williams and I started just like
Norman Mingo.
Yeah.
Just to correct you. Yeah.
Oh, what did I say?
Ringo.
Oh, Ringo. I meant Norman Mingo. Yeah.
Hey, Ringo. No,
hey,
Ringo.
That's funny. Norman Ringo. No, Norman Mingo. I loved his the way he would do his covers, and Richard Williams, and man, there's just so many of those. There's so many of the mad artists and then I started getting into like Drew Struzan, but Drew Friedman, and Mort Drucker, of course, Jack Davis, the whole lot of them, but that just kept happening all through from when I was like maybe 10 or so until I was like in my 20s. And by that time it was like C.F. Payne and Roberto Prada and all these different illustrators are doing Mad covers and different things.
Yeah.
And I had so many Mad magazines that I collected that really was like, that was like the ultimate dream for me to do Mad work. But a lot of those illustrators inspired me to do what I do and get into illustration. And I had all these magazines um, categorized and saved. And then I went through divorce, and my ex threw them all away.
Wow, she took your mother's place. That's nice.
Yeah. That and my fishing stuff. So that was nice. But I even had so I had all these magazines that I was saving, Mad magazines, since I was a kid. And then just before they were all thrown away, this friend of mine brought me, he was like way older than me, but he gave me a box full of Mad magazines from the late 60s all through the 70s that he had, that he knew that I would cherish them. And I think I got to look through all of them like one time, because I just got them, and then I went through divorce and everything, and it's all gone.
Well, I'd like to tell you that hole in your heart will heal, but it will never heal. That will always be a gaping wound of pain.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like,
I cannot forgive you.
Like those are the kind of things I would have wanted to keep forever, just because there's so much history there, like people don't understand, like I feel, every job that I get, I feel super grateful and excited about, and I've gotten to do some pretty awesome jobs, but like, in all seriousness, being able to, the cover I did for Mad Magazine is that's more important to me than when I got to paint the Pope for Time Magazine.
I get it.
It's like Alfred E. Newman, like going, like that's like way cooler to me than
I did it. I worked for them for 10 years, and it was always like, when are you going to let me do a cover? Oh yeah, and
they're weird about that.
I submitted one for the first issue where they were supposed to be going raunchier.
Oh,
and they didn't even reply to it because it was unsolicited. That's just how they were. And I thought I had to ask them about it. Oh yeah, that was cute, but no. And I painted a big portrait of him looking like a crackhead who just gotten out of an asylum, with a big scar down the middle of his skull where he'd been operated on because he was so insane. And it was like the cover they picked was Alfred Xeroxing his butt over and over again on his Xerox machine,
yeah.
which was already a joke that was 10 years old. I was like, really? But
yeah, it's weird. I that's one thing that's funny about, before I got into like publication work, and then years later, and having the different perspective of like, before it was so scary and so intimidating, and I held, I was afraid to even talk on the phone with art directors. Like they were just way too good, and like they were almost like a godlike status or something.
All right.
And I didn't understand how the industry worked or anything, and then years later, you're just like, oh, they're like what you said, like a bunch of drunks working on a cartoon show. They don't know what they're doing, and it's just interesting once you look behind the curtain sometimes, because I like, for me, like I would realize, like I would talk with like I love Sam Viviano. He was the art director for so many years, and he teased me for many years. I had him on my podcast, and I told him like he flirted with me, like he would invite me into the Mad Studios in New York when I'd visit, and he'd take me around, and he would talk to everyone about how awesome my work was and all this stuff. And then I'm like, am I gonna get a opportunity to work for Mad? And and then no, nothing happened. And then like a year or two would come by, and I'd be in New York again, and he'd invite me in, and I even showed him I did like a Mad cover just to show him that I can do a Mad cover. I did my own cover with Alfred E. Newman, and wanted to prove to him that I can paint Alfred E. Newman just like anyone else can. And he thought, oh, this is cool. It was a fun idea. I had Alfred E. Newman with his face blown black, with his hair all fringed, and he had like shotgun pellets in his face. And I had Dick Cheney standing there going like this, and I had the woods there. And the crazy thing is, so I still didn't get work. I cannot believe I didn't bring this up when I talked to Sam. But the crazy thing is Mark Fredrickson did that exact cover like a month later. So I think I kind of influenced that cover that Mark Fredrickson ended up doing.
You may very well have. It was just that psychological thing that I'll tell you in a minute about my same situation when I tried to get in there. When you try to get in there, they don't want you. They have to ask you. You have to somehow get known enough to where they ask you.
Yeah.
And they got to know me by Cracked.
Oh yeah. I
Right.
worked with them too. Terrible.
So
magazine.
yeah, so I'm working for Cracked, and they brought me into the office. I didn't ask them.
Yeah.
And I realized it was a way to pump me about what was going on at Cracked, because I was doing every back cover and a main story all the time. And so I was like one of their Crack's #1 artists, besides, of course, Severin. And so
Oh, I remember that guy too.
they're like, we like this one story. And I said, well, the story you like the best was inked by Severin. That's why you like it. And they're like, oh, they go kind of go quiet. And they're like, well, you know, what we'd like is, can you quit Cracked? And I said, and work for you? And they said, no, we would just like you to quit Cracked. And I'm saying, what? I didn't realize this was a test, right?
Oh, okay.
You know, it's like, if I would quit Cracked, then maybe they would hire me. They would not guarantee it. And I offered them a compromise. I don't even know what I said exactly now, you know, just like, well, you know, I'll quit Cracked if you guarantee me at some point work. You don't even have to give it to me right away, but no, we don't guarantee anything here. And it's just like, so I said, sorry, I can't do it. It was, I got a monthly back cover gig and a main story. I was learning how to draw cartoony, and I could draw there instead of just be an inker. They were nice to me, you know, they paid me pretty well, not nearly like what Mad paid me later, but so I didn't get in and kept working for Cracked. And then at some point I had a parting of the ways with Cracked. That was another weird, ugly story, but I won't talk about that. But I just thought, I did the Ren and Stimpy thing, right?
Yeah.
I had done it for a year, and we were turning into a thing, right? Some fame and all that. And I thought, based on that, I'll get an appointment with them again and see if they've changed their mind. And I get an appointment, and they have me meet with that guy who used to be on the pose for the back covers and stuff, the fat guy with the beard, Lenny.
Oh,
do you know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was like a junior, not really the art director guy. He was like the guy that you got if they didn't want to see you. And so he looked through all my latest work and just was nice, but I knew this was just a big fucking waste of time. And then years later, Joe Orlando, do you remember that name?
Yeah.
He had gotten more involved with Mad, you know, kind of switching from being a regular editor at DC, and then he was the advertising guy at DC, and then he finally got his hands back on Mad again from being an original contributor way back in the day. And he always wanted to be on the editorial side of it. And so he finally got some influence there. So he gets a hold of me because I'd done a little work for him. And I saw this Big Blown Baby comic that you did. This is a comic I did for Dark Horse. And I think you should do some Mad samples. So I did a thing with Clinton, some script with Clinton, and I thought I kind of killed it, you know, certainly better than anything I'd ever done for Cracked. And
Yeah.
it was, I kind of put on my Mort Drucker hat, but didn't give them exact Mort Drucker because I thought that was bullshit to do that, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's like one of those weird things where they kind of want you to do that, but they don't want you to do it. You can never explain where's that sweet spot. And so I did that, and he was disappointed with it. And I was like, oh, all right. And then I went on to, I was in the middle of art directing. It was the first crazy big job after Ren and Stimpy exploded. I was the art director on that Space Jam movie for 4 or 5 months. It made no sense. I had no experience in art directing a movie. It was just somehow the cachet of that Ren and Stimpy being a hit and it being the wildest crazy thing, the wildest funny cartoon.
Yeah.
And Ivan Reitman wanted artists who were could do realistic and who could do funny. He was actually pretty articulate about shit like that for a director of live action. And not that he had anything to directly do with him finding me, but I could have been nixed by him right away and wasn't. He liked my work. But so I worked there for a while, and then Mad calls me, and the art director, his name was Kaboom Schneider. I don't know if you know that name. He's pre Sam Viviano. And he's like, you know, we're looking for a new artist on this strip called Monroe. And I saw your samples for that you did for Joe. And I talked to him, and he felt negatively about them, but I like them, but you can't tell him I like them. And it's like, well, I'm not talking to him. So, you know, and he goes, we want you to do some samples for this Monroe strip, and we'll pay you. So I did, and I got the gig, and I did that for 10 years. And because of that gig, they started giving me the lesser stories that Drucker wasn't going to do. Davis had left because of the content shift. You know, he did a kind of protest about that. And Therese wasn't doing as much work, I don't think. So I sort of got the game show parodies and, you know, the lesser things like that. And then an odd regular thing about horror movies or whatever they thought I fit.
Yeah.
And I was having the time of my life. You know, I was being well paid. I'm working at Mad. They let me do different stuff, you know. I got this strip every month. And the interesting thing about it was when I first talked to editorial about the strip, they're like, well, here's we like your work, but here's the other reason. We like that you've done a lot of different continuity comics, you know, like in the moment storytelling. We don't do that here. We do something different. We do the Mad thing. And we want you to do the Monroe strip in the moment style, you know. And in other words, continuity that's living and breathing like a TV show or movie or a regular comic, shall we say, where it's much more cinematic than condensing moments of a movie or something.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really character driven. And so they're saying, this guy's scripts don't work quite yet. He's a TV writer, and they're funny, and we know that the potential's here, but we need you to turn it into a Mad comic strip. So I'm saying, and okay, and I'm saying, well, what are you asking me exactly? I say, are you giving me the ability to re-edit the script? And they said, yep. And I'm like, really? They didn't want to do it.
So wow. So you had to, besides draw, you had to like you had to edit it and like.
Well, in the sense they needed a Harvey Kurtzman to break down the script into something visual that the artist could do.
Take out the fat and all that kind of stuff.
It's kind of hard to describe, but I had the freedom to make it work as a comic because it was more working as a TV show or something, you know. I don't want to get into the weeds too much on that, but basically, and I was saying, well, you know, also while we're talking, can I do hand lettering? Because I can letter, or I could hire somebody, and like, no, we don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, that type that you've been using for so long, it's just kind of old. And aren't we doing the new Mad? Yeah. And they're like, oh, you kind of have a point. And then I told them about Richard Starkings, and I don't know if you ever saw the Kiss comic book that came out from Image.
I've seen samples of that before, but not like thoroughly.
Well, it was computer lettering, but what they did was they fucked with the fonts, you know. So one guy would talk in a different font, and one guy would, you know, and they would do certain things for action emphasis and certain things for singing or whatever. And I said, that's a little pretentious, but I think for something like Mad, it will kind of work. And I said, can I do that? And they're like, yeah, but we want nothing to do with it.
What?
So I ended up getting a fee to package the whole thing. I contacted the letterer, Starkings, and contracted that with them, and did all the art and was editing it. And in that editing process, I was rewriting it too, because sometimes things wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So we would have these editorial meetings, when I was turned in my roughs, right? And they would say, we like everything you did here, here, and here. Yeah, this is better. This is better. We don't like what you changed here. Why did you change that? And I said, well, I changed it for the same reason in my mind that you liked this other thing and can see the need for it, but you can't see the need for this. I was, well, you went too far with this. So I would pull it back, or I would argue it. And that's how suicidal I was. You know, you do not do this at Mad.
Yeah.
You do not question editorial. And the only reason I survived there was Nick Meglin, the old school guy, agreed with me a lot of times. Plus, I believe he liked fucking with John Ficarra. That was just his, it was amusing to him to see this artist trying to commit suicide every month on his strip, and then he would be the one to say, no, look at the art, look at the whole strip, look how good it is, and placate Ficarra, I guess. I don't know how often that had to happen, because some months editorial was just fine. There wouldn't be any back and forth with me. I wouldn't have piss and vinegar in my veins, and I go, oh yeah, sure, I'll change it. Oh, you want him running away into the sunset again? Okay, whatever. But at a certain point, after many years, Kaboom left, and Sam Viviano took his place. Your hero. So now I'm going to talk some shit. Sorry, but
it's all right. It's fine with me, man.
Sam, now that Mad's dead, I'm not worried about that avenue drying up for me. But Sam and I didn't really get along.
Yeah.
And because he wanted to exercise, and it was his right as art director, to control me. And I had been out of control, so to speak, for 7 years. You do a strip, and they would reluctantly tell me, Monroe is our most popular strip, by the way. And I demanded their highest paid rate at one point and got it.
Yeah.
So we can't pay you anymore. You're getting Drucker's rate. I'm like, okay, I guess that shut me up, But Sam came in, and Sam announces to me, you'll no longer be speaking to editorial, you'll be speaking to me. Because what had happened is Nick had retired. I had no hero anymore.
Yeah.
It was Ficarra, and Ficarra's like, oh, good, I don't have to put up with this asshole anymore. I'll leave it to Sam.
Oh my gosh.
And Sam actually enjoys being the heavy hand of his truth. And so he would start to tell me, why are you always drawing Monroe hiding his face? Can you show his whole face each time? And it's funny because in the logo, I have the character Monroe's face in it, where half his face is covered up. And basically the drawing in the lettering itself is a parody of this, nobody would know today, but back in World War II, whenever GIs would come and take over a town, they would do a graffiti of this guy. It said, Kilroy was here. And it would draw this dumb guy with his nose. All you could see is the top half of his head and his nose hanging down, looking over a wall or something. So Monroe was always in conflict with his mom and embarrassed by her. So I'd always have him do things like hiding behind couches and shit. And he would look over that, and I would repeat that image of the half face with the nose hanging down, because he had a big long nose.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, till it was like a logo almost. And here's Sam, got 7 or 8 years of the strip to look at, and it doesn't click for him. just draw his whole face each time. And I said, really? I mean, he goes, he could see I'm really flipping around, on the other end of the phone. And he said, don't feel bad. I'm correcting Drucker now too.
Oh my gosh.
And I went, what? You're correcting Drucker? And I didn't know what to say. I had to hold myself back, because he's the art director. He's your new boss. Shut the fuck up, I know Drucker a little bit, and knowing him, he probably would put up with it, because Drucker warned me, do what editorial wants you to do. You won't regret it. Sergio told me the same thing. So I'm like, that's why so many talented artists had brief stays at Mad, because they had an opinion.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's funny.
my relationship with him was quite prickly for several years, and he finally started to say, well, actually, what really broke me is one day he said, "Why do you do reaction shots?" And I just couldn't help myself. I said, "Yeah, I guess Charles Schultz got it wrong." And silence on the other end of the phone. But basically what happened is they said, "We want you to go back to how you drew the strip in the first year where you put in all this insane detail. You're doing it much simpler now," which over the years I'd sort of simplified the strip a bit. And I had talked to the writer. He was a good friend. And as the strip went on, and I had mentioned it to him, I said, "Does it bother you that I'm drawing the strip a little simpler?" And he goes, no, you do the strip how you do it. I'm happy you're doing it." And so that's when he started saying, "I want you to work harder on it, but I also want to be able to editorialize you more than I ever have."
Yeah.
We had a parting of the ways. So
That's funny. Like, well, I'll tell you my first job when I finally got the call, Sam called me and he goes, "Hey, I finally got a mad job for you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, finally." I was so excited. And because I had been at that point getting a pretty good reputation for my caricature work, and I knew I would fit in perfectly. And to me, I would get every issue, and I'm in the illustration world now. I'm doing caricature illustration for all kinds of magazines, but the main magazine that I know that I would shine in was Mad. I knew it would be great, and I'm not even talking covers. I was expecting, like I'd flip through them, like, I could have done that page, or I could have done this thing. Like, there's so many things I could have fit in, and I always assume that when I finally get something from Matt, it's probably going to be like a small little, maybe a little thing in the intro because they're going to test me out or something. But I actually got a 2-page full color page with, like, I think 7 characters. It was stand-up comedians that they wanted me to do. It was like Ellen DeGeneres and Lewis Black and a bunch of different people, Bill Maher, I think. And my main instruction was, Sam said, a lot of artists make the mistake. They're excited to work for Mad, and they, they'll try to we hire them because we like their style. But now that they're doing something for Mad, they try to, like, make it more Mad-like. And he said, "Don't do that. Just be you. Do what you do, because that's why we want you to do this." And I was like, "Well, that's easy. I do me very well all the time. So that's what I'll do." So I get the sketch approved, and I'm just pumped the whole time. I'm just like this is finally doing this thing, and I paint the whole thing as best I can, and brick walls behind them. They're all these comedians are supposed to be like on a comedy stage or whatever. And I finally finish it, and I'm like nervous to send the final in. I'm just like, oh, I send it in, and no, this is no joke. He calls me and he goes, "Hey, Jason, looks really good. Really happy with this. Except for there's a few things where you kind of like," because I would kind of like leave, like, it would be like tight, and my style at that time was a lot of times I would like it would get a little sketchy at one point and like loose, and just kind of sketch and loose off of the image, where it would go from really, really tight to, like, it was like kind of like me letting you know that it's a painting, and I would do that. Like, the bottom part would be like some brush strokes. I would purposely do brush strokes, and just like to, and he goes, "This is really good, but that can you kind of finish it up and tighten it up so it looks more like a Mark Fredrickson?" So it's like, wait a minute, you told me to not try to make it look like any Mad artist's work, but now you're telling me to make it look like Mark Fredrickson's work. So that was kind of funny. So I had to go through and Mark Fredrickson it up a little bit.
they got the notion in their mind, because I did get to do a cover finally, and I thought I was all excited about it. And they said, "You can't do it in your style." I'm like, "What?" "No, we're looking for more realistic cover artists. You need to do it like in a photo bash style." They didn't even call it photo bash back then, but we want it photorealistic. So I don't know if they supplied me with them or I got them, but they might have even supplied me. They gave me photographs and just said distort them. So I didn't know how to do that. I faked it in Photoshop and barely painted anything. You know, I just distorted it, and they took it and they used it. They didn't love it. I believe they used it. I'm trying to remember now. I'm pretty sure they did. And that was the end of it. They never asked me to do it again because it just wasn't on the level of guys who could take photo reference and then paint it like you and make it something still a little bit cartoonish in a certain way, but kind of making it a new form of life, so to speak, instead of just distorting a photograph. And that was what they wanted to do from that point forward. It was one of their gambits that they'll sell better somehow if they use more realistic stuff, in my opinion. So yeah, they were looking for artists who were going to do it more real, and even in the corners where they caught you know.
Yeah.
And Sam also just liked to catch people and make them do a round of fixes, so he could say, I got him to fix that. You know, is my opinion. You know,
Yeah.
As you can see, I'm a bitter guy about our relationship. So, using your show to talk trash about
no, it's fun. You know, what's funny is I was always disappointed because I was so excited about that first job, and it ended up turning out really well. And I was like, man, I was pretty proud of myself that my first job was a 2-page full color. It turned out great. And then I didn't hear from Mad for like at least maybe 2 years. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, it went great. Like, why, you know? And so then it was like extra torture for me, because I'm like, what the heck? Like, I thought I'm gonna be like one of the usual gang of idiots. I'm in this thing, like, come on, like I'm waiting for every issue. Then the next, and he ended up hiring me a bunch, like maybe I think I did 4 more pieces or something, like before Mad switched to the Burbank one. But every piece that I got from there on out was non-caricature, which was like what I was all about. And it's funny because even if you like, I've talked with Mark Fredrickson about this, and he doesn't understand it, because he's like, they should have been using you like crazy, because he's like, Mark Fredrickson's like, you're a way better caricature artist than I am, and than a lot of these guys, and they could have totally done some awesome stuff with you. But instead, what I was getting from them was, because they realized that I could paint realistic images, I was starting to get like movie posters spoofs, where they wanted me to do a spoof of like a Terminator poster or whatever it was. And because I could paint it and make it look exactly like the Terminator poster, and just switch the characters around, and, you know, put Katie Couric in there instead of so-and-so. And you know, I spoofed National Lampoon's Family Vacation poster with the Trumps. And so I had to paint that poster, that famous poster with Chevy Chase with the tennis racket and all that, but make it the Trumps and make it look exact. So, you know, so I was getting those kinds of things, which, like, you know, a lot of people like Richard Williams did those, and some of those guys, but I was like, yeah, I'll do it, but I want to do like the caricature page where I'm like, you know, give me a Donald Trump where I can like really rip him apart and do some awesome, crazy image of him. But I wasn't getting those. So it wasn't until Mad moved to Burbank where I got my first cover, which was awesome. And then the last thing I did for them was, I don't even know what they're doing right now. I don't even know if they're existing right now, but the last thing I did for them, it was pretty cool, because I finally got to do some actual caricature for them. I got 3 pages of spoofs, which I thought was funny, because it was 2000, I think maybe 2019 or 20 when I did my last one for them. I can't remember now, but I did 3 full-page spoofs that were fun, and I really, you know, had a blast, like, getting to do what I do. But it was Everyone Loves Raymond spoof, a show that hasn't been on in like 20 something years. and then I did a Frasier spoof. It was called Hell Frasier, and it was like, you know, combining those 2 things. And I was so confused because they didn't tell me the premise of anything. And I was like, why am I doing spoofs of these shows from like 20 something years ago? And again, there was no explanation really. And then I did like two broke girls, but it was two baroque girls, and it was like gargoyles and stuff. So it was a fun project, but I was very confused. But then it wasn't until it was published that I got to see what the joke was. And it was like, what if you were caught in TV hell and you had to only watch these shows? But it's like, shouldn't you have told me all that while I was working on it? Like, like would have, but I had a blast, man. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It's fun. I think people enjoy this kind of stuff because I think, people don't mind if anyone's a fan of art and illustration, this kind of conversation is what I like to do on this podcast, because nobody really gets to hear about this kind of stuff, the behind the scenes things, because it's really what it's like,
Yeah. Well, I think the editorial department in Burbank was pretty young and inexperienced.
Yeah.
So,
it was very new and fresh.
And my suspicion, and this is purely speculation from a distance, because they contacted me and they said, do you want to revive Monroe? And I said, sure, but I had heard that they were offering a deal for new projects where you could participate in development if it turned into a TV show or a movie. Honestly, the only reason Warner's kept Mad going because the numbers weren't there. Nick had warned me about this 10 years earlier. He says, sooner or later, Mad's going to cease publication. They don't sell enough for the cost of making it.
Yeah.
And paying all the contributors these top prices. And so you will probably live through when the magazine is shut down. And he was kind of right about that. But I think that the reason Warner's held their nose and lost money on the Burbank Mad was that, and they also didn't necessarily hire a super expensive, experienced staff other than the editor. What was that they just didn't really have the faith in it, but they said, well, if we can somehow use this as the mining, like we do our superhero comics for film projects, we'll just keep doing it to see if something develops. So in other words, and it was the only way they could attract TV writers, which is who they wanted. And well, my writer's a TV writer, but you already did the strip for us, so we own the rights to it. And they go, well, yeah, but I know this is kind of unprecedented for Warner Brothers, but we would like that same contract. And I talked to the writer and he said, can we not do it unless we get the contract where we can participate with it being developed into an animated thing or TV? And he was all for that because he was also really bitter that, what's that? Those movies, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He thought it was a ripoff of our strip. And,
interesting.
I didn't watch it, so I don't know if that's a stretch or not. But anyway, we almost reworked for Mad, and I did. They asked me to do a pass at the first cover, and I did another Alfred E. Newman, just so far gone, so street homeless, crack addicted, meth looking, fucked up Alfred, that they loved it and wouldn't put it on the cover, but ran it on the inside in a couple of issues later. But
cool. That's funny.
That was all I ended up doing for them. There was that one color piece, and never got the strip going again, because I think by the time he was trying to negotiate that for me, he already saw the handwriting on the wall. They were only going to give him a year or two to get something going for them.
Yeah.
And since they didn't develop anything off the strip, off the bat, what happened was it just sort of turned into mostly reprint with occasional new covers, and they weren't distributing it. They weren't distributing it out in the newsstands. It was just being sent to subscribers. And I got an issue a few 6-8 months ago, or maybe even longer, because they'd reprinted something of mine. And I haven't heard or gotten anything since. I don't know if it's still in publication.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's been, no, actually, I just totally forgot about this until now, but I was actually asked to do a cover for them a couple weeks ago.
There you go. So they still are.
But the reason it slipped my mind is because I, but there's been a lot going on in my life. Like we're gonna have to move really soon. And my computer, that's like even my setup doing the podcast right now is completely different because my computer is dead and is being fixed, and I almost lost all my things. Luckily, I was able to back things up. So it's been a crazy. So when Mad they contacted me, it was literally maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and they wanted me to do a King Kong cover for them, and I couldn't believe I had to turn down a cover. I would have loved to have done it, but it's just I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it because I didn't have my computer. And like right now, a buddy of mine has lent me his laptop, so now I can use his laptop to work. But at the time, I had nothing, and I didn't know when I was going to be able to. That was like totally screwed. So yeah, that's so they are doing something. I don't know if it was just going to be a cover and then the inside was going to be old stuff because they didn't say anything much to me. But yeah, I still can't believe that.
I believe that's what it is, that they're still doing 90% reprint. But I don't know.
So I wanted to ask you, from all of the illustration type stuff and the history that you have with in animation and all the different things that you were dipping your toes in and working on, how did you get from all that to doing the urban type plein air paintings? Because I have a couple questions. I mean, was it one of those things where, which I can kind of relate to, is it was a good thing to get outside and just paint, just to do something different, but then I'm curious about like where, because you have such an expressive, explosive style, I think, with your plein air painting, where it just takes it to a completely another level to what I see with most kind of plein air work. So I'm just curious where that development came from and that approach, because I can't picture you doing straight like straight plein air painting, like what most plein air paintings look like. I just can't picture you doing that kind of work,
Well, in fact, I did for a while when I started.
Yeah.
One day, I always wanted to be a fine artist, Jason. It's like of all the, I never could make up my mind. I want to be an illustrator. I want to be a fine artist. I want to be a comic book artist. I want to be an animation. So I just kind of did everything. Never specialized, which is a mistake. We actually should stock up. I don't want to forget about my caricature period, which I haven't talked about. Maybe we can segue to that at some point. But with the plein air stuff, I just one day was at the art store and I see Plein Air magazine, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" And I open it up and I see, wait a minute. I had been out of trying to even consider contemporary art forever, and I'm seeing this stuff that looks like it's painted in the 1930s. Some of it almost as good, but almost none of it as good, but earnestly trying. And I liked that stuff, just for the skill level and everything. Those guys like Edgar Payne. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I have a book by him.
Yeah. So I'm like, I like Edgar Payne. I can do that. And maybe not as well, but I can fake that or something. But I said, well, you know how to paint, but you were taught to paint portraiture mostly, and you taught yourself more illustrative stuff, but you're not really that good at it. Maybe you better get a refresher course. So I started taking these workshops that plein air painters use to supplement their income. And it was also the way to educate myself about what's this market, and found out that Laguna Beach actually had a couple galleries that sold this stuff, and that there was this sort of movement toward outside realism again, and people were buying it. People wanted it. They didn't all want kind of empty contemporary ideas or extreme contemporary ideas or pure abstraction. They liked this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I said, oh, I can finally be a painter now. And I would join these contests and stuff. But anyway, I got ahead of myself. I took a few classes from some really good painters and started painting, and I was painting very, very tight. And I was painting, trying to do this classic realism, of forests and streams and mountains and all that boring shit. And it was like, I was a little bit constipated, but pretty good at it. And after a while, and thinking that it was important to be classic, to like, I need to paint scenes that don't have telephone poles in them or anything, don't have the trappings of modern civilization. And I was hanging out with this guy named Tony Peters, who was doing the opposite. He was doing kind of more urban subjects, but quite realistic. And I'm like, urban painting, what's that? You know? And one day we were at this one place that had this combo of like, you could kind of pick a little area. It was in the city still, but you could pick a little area. And if you cropped it right, it looked like it was beautiful country. But the view I wanted had a telephone pole in it and a house. And I was like, and a fence. And I'm just like, maybe I could paint those out. And then all of a sudden, you know, what is this rule you're putting on yourself?
Yeah.
So I painted it with the telephone pole and the house. And all of a sudden I went, oh. And then I remembered that adage that artists always tell you, people giving advice about art: paint what you know, paint your time, you know, paint your everything around you that you know makes it contemporary. And I thought, oh, okay. And Tony is fond of thinking that he gave me the idea, and I guess his influence was there. But just from trying it that one day, I started doing the urban stuff. And I found out that I really enjoyed looking for the reference. You know, I would get my, you know, camera and hop fences over at the railroad tracks or whatever, and take this shit and get caught, thrown out. And I was not a young man anymore, but, you know, young middle age. And I was like, this is fun. I still feel like a kid, you know? And so I really got into those subjects, and I would never ask permission. I would just hop fences. And when I was athletically in good shape, I could do shit like that. And I liked the danger of it, so to speak. And I would try to put that on into the work. And that translated to doing it, painting it more and more vigorously. You know, I wanted to see the brush strokes. I wanted to have an action to it. And I took another painter named Jove Wang, Chinese guy, really good artist. And I said, teach me how to paint brushier, looser. And he did. And the funny thing is he sold these paintings of the Chinese peasant women, you know, that whole genre that's a thing. And they were tight and beautiful. But I walked into a studio one day where he had just done the block in, and it was the most fucking incredible thing I'd ever seen. And I'm like, why don't you do that? You'd be done in half the time, and you'll be in contemporary art galleries.
Yeah.
And he just laughed at me like, what? Shut up, you know, because he was aiming for that Western market, you know, the Western art market that would, that likes stuff like kind of the cheesy level of Chinese peasants. The Western art market likes anything that's ethnic, that's keeping dark people back in a primitive period of time. It's the most racist
I know exactly what
of fucking art that there is.
Like a native woman holding a basket.
Yeah, the Indian kneeling at the stream listening.
Yeah.
Why don't you do a painting of him killing a white man? No, God, no, we're not doing that. You know?
Yeah.
Or killing anybody, or you know. And no, they're just listening at the stream. They're very benevolent, you know.
Yeah.
How about the Trail of Tears? No, we're not going to do that. But I didn't want to be in that art market. He was making really good money doing that. But so as the years went by, I just started doing that urban painting, and me and a few other artists were doing it. Now it's really commonplace, but you know, I guess I was in the vanguard for a little while.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, I just see, my dad does plein air painting. That's how I got introduced to it. You know, he's got his style, and I think his paintings are great. I've played with it, like, you know, I've gone out. I always look at it more as a study time for myself. Like, I never
Sure.
I never thought of it as, thanks, babe. My daughter's brought me some water. I never thought of it as, oh, I'm hoping to have these plein air paintings in a gallery someday or make money off of them. They were always just studying, and I always feel like I got my ass handed to me every time. Like it's the light changing, and I never did it from photo reference. I always did it like on location. But I remember the first time I saw your stuff, I was just like, oh, you can do that? Like, because I was like living in uptown Chicago, and I'm like, there's so much, this is way cooler. So I started going around the city and doing like urban studies, like with the L train, and it was all of a sudden I was like, oh, now I'm enjoying this. And I was trying to be looser, and it just, you know, like, so your stuff like really had such a, to me, it's like a, I guess I would try to say it's like rock star style of plein air painting. It's like you can do the do 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 with the classical music, and the, you know, you got the barn and the haystacks and all that stuff, or you can be like you know AC/DC rocking. that's
Well, you can even do rock and roll barns if you know.
Yeah, you can. But that's what I'm trying to say is like you brought like a different aesthetic, and it had like a different like volume to it, and like there was something about it that was just like, oh man, okay, I wasn't even thinking that way. Like that's, and I always love how you push the color too, and you do a lot of night scenes, which I wasn't seeing very much of that at the time either. So it's pretty cool because you definitely were pushing the envelope as far as, as far as what I had access to, because I really wasn't, I kind of get bored with plein air painting. I don't know what, it's not something that like, I'm the kind of artist, I never get bored with drawing and painting people. Like I just love, people are so interesting to me. And like I go plein air painting with my dad, and in the past I've gone with him, and he'll go out and take me to like a stream in the middle of there's like a waterfall, and there's a stream in the middle of the forest, and it's just like trees everywhere, and he goes out in the middle of the stream with waders on, and he's like standing out there, and he's just like painting, and I'm standing there just slapping mosquitoes, being like, this is bullshit.
Yep.
Like well, I don't want to paint this tree. Like there's nothing here that's interesting to me to paint. So
you got to find your lane,
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you. I haven't been a plein air painter in years. I was out there for 3 or 4 years, and I recommend it. But then I just started working. Then I just started going out with a camera and coming back and painting with reference, because I found that the camera didn't trap me to those unpleasant situations that you just described.
Yeah.
The lights constantly changing. There's people harassing you. There's this, there's that. And it's really hard on the eyes and your skin. I'm very fair skinned, so I burn up easy. And so it was just like all these different things that you had to deal with, but mainly the constant changes, that it made me work too tight. And you would think from a photograph back in the studio, it would be the opposite of that, but it's not. I just use the photo as a starting point and then paint it my way. And it's,
see, I love this, because this is what happens when you're a self-taught artist and you're trying to learn from another artist. You're looking at their work and you're like, okay, so I remember being inspired by your work, and I'm going to Uptown. I set up a plein air box. I'm on the streets. I got gangbangers come up to me and like saying all kinds of crazy shit to me while I'm painting, like totally harassing me. And I'm like, man, this is nerve wracking, but I'm going to do a cool urban painting,
Yeah.
like, and like cars whipping by and people yelling things at you, and getting baked in the sun. And here you are actually in the studio, like
la-di-da.
Yeah. But the same thing.
I did my time. I did my time.
Yeah.
Doing that. And as you know, when you're an artist, everyone always finds it amusing. You're out here doing this, particularly the urban stuff. They're like, what? And they think it's funny, right? Gives them a kick. And a lot of times those gangbangers will come up to you and go, oh, I'm an artist too. I do tax, and or whatever. I found it to be kind of a get out of jail free, so to speak, at times in some really sketchy areas, because there's this sort of respect for the artist type, like he's the mythical retarded person in a small village or something. They just don't just, okay, you're an artist, you get a pass. And
I didn't have
otherwise,
that experience. I had people come up to me and like, they're like, why are you painting that? Or what is that? And I don't mind that. I don't mind having a conversation, or, but then they'll start asking like, can you paint this? And I'm like, yeah. But right now I'm focusing on this. And then, but the thing that would get annoying is sometimes people just start digging, like grabbing my paint tubes or different things. I'm like, what do you put it down? What are you doing? Like stuff like that. I'm like, what the heck, man?
Yeah.
It's so
Well,
weird.
Also, when I was out there, it was probably at the height of my bodybuilding. So I was kind of an intimidating individual. So it would just be like, they wouldn't break into my personal space. I never had that happen. But they would want to talk,
Yeah, I don't mind
about
that.
art or whatever. Well, I would mind it a little. I kind of like my focus,
Yeah. That's the only
So-
part. But you kind of expect, someone, when you're painting, especially in the city, there's so many people. I one time I was in my old neighborhood. It brought me right back to high school, because a car drove by and said, "Hey, art fag," and I was like, "Oh, I'm back in high school." That was like, I think I was called
Everybody's
that all
a
the
critic.
time.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is kind of funny. But so, what were you saying about the caricature thing that you wanted to mention?
Well, it's
Earlier.
funny because I didn't remember this for years. I only remembered it recently. But when I was in my early 20s, still knocking around in Hollywood, just working at those shitty animation studios and stuff, as I mentioned, I first mentioned John Kay. And I had this thing, I had just discovered those French guys, Maladier and those guys,
Oh yeah.
who were like the first ones to really do the big detailed heads and
With the super tight cross hatching and stuff.
Yeah, with colored pencil mostly and
Yeah.
stuff
Yep.
like that. And I was like just blown away by that shit. I'm just like, that's what I want to do. And I started doing caricatures that way, that were a combination of water. I don't know if it was cell vinyl or watercolor. I can't quite remember now, or gouache, but that mixed with the colored pencils. And I did about 4 or 5 of them. I still have them buried someplace. I need to dig them out. And I thought I was going to do those. I'll just submit these to Rolling Stone or somebody and see if I can get work doing this.
Yeah.
And I cannot explain why, after I did 4 or 5 of them, they were pretty good. I mean, I've looked at them since, and they're not where they really needed to be. I was no Philip Burke or anything, but I could have gone that way. There's no doubt. I could say that. It sounds egotistical, but
No, I mean,
basically whatever field I aim myself toward, if you work hard enough at it and you're persistent, you can get that. But I fell into comic books instead. But at that time, I remember John came over one day, or I shouldn't say that. He never drove a car. I drove him over to my place one day, and he saw one of those on my drawing board, and he goes, "What the fuck is this?" And that was the thing that impressed him about my painting more than anything I had ever done. So when it came time to Ren and Stimpy, and I was living in New York, and we weren't partners. We used to be partners, and we did a few films together. And I had said, no, I'm going to go back to school. Nobody's ever going to buy our cartoon. Goodbye. And I get a call one day. I also got a call from him when he did Mighty Mouse, and I asked for too much money, so he didn't give it to me. And then he said, well, I sold Ren and Stimpy, and I want you to come be the head of background department on that. And at the time, I was sort of I was in one of those relationship flux things where I loved the girl, but knew it wasn't going to last. But it was too easy to be with her because she was from a wealthy family, and I could have my own art studio and pay for that. I could live with her for free, you know, and I loved her, but I just knew it wasn't the long-term thing, you know, and I went like, you're going to have to come back out to California. And so I just grabbed onto that. And I went to work for him. And one day he came in and said, I need you to do this close-up. I want you to do it more realistically. And I started doing those. And it never occurred to me that in the whole time he had classified me and had waited until this cartoon to take advantage of it. Because he knew I could do that.
Yeah.
So I started doing them in the cartoons. And then I did them for the first year. And then the second year, I didn't hire back. He had hired these two girls who were not good. But they had something weirdly expressionistic about their work. And that's what he was attracted to, you know, because he really liked bizarre original artists. But they didn't know how to paint. And they also both had volatile tempers. One of them even punched me in the face, but that's another whole story. But you know, so he would tell me that you need to art direct them. You need to tell them, you make them better. And they would say, John likes my work. You don't tell me what to do. It was like one of those scenarios. And so I didn't rehire them the next year because by then I had enough power with John where I could hire and fire. And so I hired Scott Wills, the guy who ended up doing Samurai Jack, and Glenn Barr,
Remember that.
the lowbrow guy, for lack of a better way to put his pop surrealism, whatever you want to call that. That was when before he had become joined into the fine art world and was doing covers for Film Threat. I don't know if you remember that magazine.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
But so Glenn became the guy to do all the most important backgrounds, and Scott became the guy to do the close-ups because he could paint tighter than me. Right? And I also had like the love that you have for detail, and I never had that really. And I could do it, but I didn't have. I like stylization a little bit more and roughness, so I would do keys for him, and he would do these tight paintings. So I get credit for something that I started but let Scott finish.
Yeah.
Things like, you know, Ren's rendered rotten teeth and stuff like that, where we would crack out the airbrushes and things like that.
You know what's funny is that was literally when I was a kid watching that show. I remember my parents did not like me watching that show, but I loved it so much. And I think that was one of my favorite things about the show was whenever they did those scenes. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever, because it was every single time, and it would just be like for a few seconds, and you'd be like, "Oh, that was so awesome!" Like, because you just didn't see that in cartoons, you know.
You also just didn't see cartoons like Ren and Stimpy. They were gone. No one did anything that crazy anymore.
Yeah, it was so awesome.
And the only other adultish cartoon was The Simpsons. And you know, artistically they weren't anything like what we did, of course. Story-wise, they went further. But anyway, we were the vanguards, and that helped make us look unique and good and different, along with the art. Even though we were doing a lot of things in the art that were just lifted from old traditions like Little Golden Books and Hanna-Barbera cartoons or whatever.
Yeah,
you know,
that's awesome.
But yeah, that has a lot to do. It was a good show, but it has a lot to do with the landscape was so fucking empty. And it was these people at Nickelodeon, women mostly, who just didn't have preconceived notions that things had to be like in a corporate way. It had to be the same old shit that they owned or whatever. They said, let's do a bunch of new cartoons. And it was that synergy of those people. John would have never become famous, never made a cartoon, never made Ren and Stimpy, except for them. And yet he was bitter about them and created this whole problem with them and ended up getting himself fired, you know. But it's such a shame because we should have done Ren and Stimpy for 20 years like SpongeBob which really, SpongeBob's a good cartoon, but even the creator, Steve Hillenburg, had admitted that SpongeBob was really Stimpy, you know?
Yeah.
And anyway,
I can see that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
that's such a shame that one guy who's so brilliant had hired this brilliant crew, because it had a whole lot to do with the people he hired. Because once later on, when he did it by himself, it wasn't any good, and just melted down. Couldn't take the pressure.
Huh.
It's not terribly uncommon in the animation business for all of a sudden one person to be given all this power and for them to go kind of power mad.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to suddenly have money and suddenly be able to tell an entire studio what to do.
Yeah. I don't want that, man.
It will test you. It's like becoming a rock star on a different level. I mean, the first time we went and did a signing someplace, when we were first starting to hit on television, to see a line all the way around the block and have people singing the songs of your show as you walk in, it's just, and everyone crying and telling you changed their lives. It's like, holy fuck, you know, how do you deal with this? And it was easier for me because I wasn't in charge of it, you know?
Yeah.
So I just got a salary like everybody else and did this nice stuff. And it was really nice to hear. And it was fun to work on for a while. But then he became a megalomaniac. That's I'm not going to go off into that. So.
That's awesome.
I've already started. I opened the door, but let's close it.
Well, hey, before we go any further, I want to show you real quick some fan art before we forget that. Let me know if you see this. You see it? Okay.
Yeah, I like it. I wish I had that chin. I really do. But that's why I have the beard, because I don't have that chin.
See, you gotta, yeah. See, that's a caricaturist right there. Like, you're thinking, like, because you got, like, I always think about, like, you know, when you're drawing someone, looking for the balance, where's the weight in the face? You know, usually if someone's got, you know, a big forehead, you usually have a smaller chin. If someone's got like a bigger chin, usually the forehead's smaller. You know, it's like there's like a give and a take there.
Yeah.
So you got to balance that out. This is by Chad Fry, by the way.
I know Chad. I didn't know that he did caricature. That's nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
He does. He's in the animation business.
Yeah, and this past year, he's working for I don't know how long he's been working with the Society of Illustrators out there, but that's how I mean, I met him before, I think in person a couple years ago, but this year he had me be a guest judge for the Society of Illustrators show, which was pretty cool. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, there used to be a professional cartoonist society called CAPS, and he ran that for quite a few years too.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
Let's see.
Oh,
This is by Ray Shipman.
oh, I can see which photograph he took that from. That's funny, but even though he totally caricatured it, that's great. And that fits my swollen head. Oh,
This one, who does this remind me of?
This reminds me of that insane that guy who does all the Western scenes in blue pencil.
Oh, you're talking about,
talking about?
yeah. My friend Tom Fluharty.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, he is awesome.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I'm annoyed with is everyone's trying to do it now. So there's so many people do it, and he teaches a class at Schoolism, the indigo blue. It's like now everyone's gonna be doing it. Like,
yeah,
like don't teach a
that
class.
That always happens. Do you know Alex Konevsky's work?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not 100%.
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with this art movement that's sprung up in the last 10 years, where realistic painters distort faces and stuff, do all this.
Yeah.
This discombobulated distortion. There's a term for it that's been coined by an art critic named John Seed, who wrote a book about it. And I always forget what he uses for the word distortion, but there's some artists who do it in this amazing way. And then there's other artists where it just looks messy, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so funny when you see a realistic artist who's kind of still an amateur doing that stuff. and it just makes his work. It's just so obvious that he's using it to like, okay, I don't know how to insert this bone and muscle over here, so I'll just scratch that out, and pretend that's my style, But yeah, this guy is influenced by him, but it's still good.
All right. Oh, by the way, this is Paula Petlawani did this.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Tom's a really good friend of mine. I always bust his balls. I'm like, why don't you try using a different color every once in a while? No, but Tom's an amazing artist. He's really, really awesome.
But I was going to say, Kanefsky was the guy that started that whole thing.
Oh,
he can paint totally realistically, but he started adding these crazy distortions into things.
Yeah.
In a much more subtle way than than it sort of evolved into. But
I like that kind of. I like to do that.
In the end, he's the godfather of that whole movement. There's always that first guy who does something a little bit different, and everybody jumps onto the bandwagon.
Yeah.
There I am in about 2 more years.
This is Dino Lee in this.
Yeah. He cut the grumpy side. That there's definitely there.
And you got the Nike swoosh on your forehead. So.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Does he get a little payment for that from Nike?
Yeah, I could get in trouble having this on here.
With all that line work, there might be a Nina in there somewhere. Who knows?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think there could be actually underneath the lip there. It looks like it says something.
Yeah.
And I see a penis as well.
Yeah. Well,
this one is by Dominic Zeilinger.
That's the minimalist etch-a-sketch kind of drawing, I like to call it.
Yeah,
it's big in animation too, where everything sort of looks like a template.
Oh yeah.
But it could be a good discipline to get yourself to stylize super simple.
You know what this reminds me of too is shit. What are those? Why can't I not think of what this is called? What are those games called? The big glass box things, and you pull the spring back, and the ball goes flying through the game.
Pinball.
I love pinball, but this looks like a pinball game, like aerial view. Like you got like the little mole thing above your eyebrow, but the eyebrows look like
my eyebrows are the flippers.
And like
flip my eyes down.
But it looks like a pinball game. I don't know.
Actually, that would be funny when you do an NFT. You know how NFTs are doing bits of limited animation? He could animate the eyebrow, knocking the eyes down or something, and have them bounce all around inside the head.
It looks awesome. And the goatee looks like a piece of toast. Yeah.
Yeah, or sort of I see an arrow pointing, sort of. Yeah, like a pointy toast. Actually, a frowning toast.
And then he's got Hangman in the ear. You can like start to.
Oh, look at that! Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I might be reading into this too much, but
I see shit in other paintings so often like that.
This one's by Christine Varadi.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, just straight realism, but well done.
Yeah, I like the how, because I think if I remember correctly in the actual reference, it's more contrast. So it's kind of nice that she toned down the values a lot in it. I think it's kind of cool.
I didn't notice how masculine my ear was before. That's a masculine ear.
Yeah, that's true.
Funny, my ears are a little too small for my head, so I can't keep. It's hard for me to keep the masks on my face if they're not perfect.
Oh, really?
Just my ear doesn't have enough cartilage in it or something. It just sort of flops down, and I look like a clown.
That's interesting problem. This is by Daniel Sheldon.
That's wild. I think he lost a little bit of what I look like, but it's just sort of a cool painting anyway. It's like another angrier version of me. I'm trying to think if there's an actor.
Woody Allen?
That's not who I was thinking of. But,
oh no, not Allen. Woody, is it Harrelson or?
Yes, it might be a little bit of Harrelson.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Not Woody Allen.
Yeah, you threw me off on that one. I wasn't going to say, what the fuck are you talking about? You just got your Woodies confused.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, you don't look anything like that guy.
Well, it's cool. All these guys are these like students of yours and stuff?
No. I just put this out there, and it's anyone that wants to participate and get their work seen, and it's just I just think it's a fun thing to show guests. I don't do it every single episode, but I try to do it as much as possible.
Oh,
So,
wow.
This is by Pablo Silas. So yeah, like some I know some of these people more now because a lot of times people have been submitting for like many episodes in a row. So
yeah,
I start to get to know some of their work, but anybody can submit whatever they like,
I like the rough, quick confidence of this. It looks like he did it in about 8 minutes tops,
Yeah,
but,
maybe not.
But
even.
I don't mean that in a derisive way. I mean it like it just looks like bam, 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 confident, bam, 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 done.
Yeah,
that's how I draw.
It's a pretty cool style.
Yeah,
and he really did capture like a good character and feeling. There's like movement to it and character. It's nice. Yeah,
it's almost like I'm rearing back, and he got that harsh nostril thing that runs in my family, and the I've never seen the eyes depicted that way, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I dig
it.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Those are the ones I don't like, where I'm like, oh yeah, that's about how old I am now. Do we have to go into that kind of detail?
This is by Jacques Lemonnier. Jacques.
Well, I look like I'm falling asleep while taking a shit or something.
Yeah. Oui.
I hope the bags aren't quite that bad under my eyes, but they probably are.
As they say in France, oui, poo-poo, oui, poo-poo. That's how they sound to me. Jacques Lemonnier. But anyways, thanks everybody for submitting those. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Very flattering.
But
I'm famous now. I've been caricatured.
But hey, man, thank you so much for joining me for this. I really appreciate it. It's fun just catching up and talking with you. It's been, I think the last time I saw you in I think I met you once in person at San Diego Comic-Con, I think, right?
Yeah.
It was like 10, 12 years ago or something. It was a while ago.
Yeah. You know what? I have a confession to make to you. I was at I don't think it was the last one, but the what do they call that con in Pasadena?
Oh, Lightbox.
Lightbox. I was at a Lightbox.
Oh, there's only been one.
You were, yeah, okay. I was at that one.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't recognize you because I don't know how to put this without insulting you, but the photo I'd seen of you from the past, you were thinner.
No, I gained more weight. Yeah. Thanks, man.
So I didn't think it was you. And it was like, I walked on by, and then you were talking, and I think you'd started on something. I just didn't really look that close at what you're doing. And I said, is that Jason? No, it's not him. And I just kept going because I was in kind of a hurry. And then after a while, I realized, fuck, I think that was him. Why didn't I go back and talk to him? But I didn't. I apologize.
It's all right.
No, I got caught up doing other stuff, doing a signing at the booth and all that. And then my girlfriend showed up, and it was time for me to go. But so I just, my path didn't cross with you again. But I saw you from a distance. I was moving by.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, now I'm gonna go kill myself.
You had more hair on your face too, I think.
I might
earlier photos. You had a beard.
No, I used to have a mustache.
Yeah.
Well, I went through a mustache phase, but I went through divorce and got remarried and I have two more babies now.
Yeah.
A 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. And when the 3-year-old was born, the day before she was born, I had a big mustache, and then I shaved it off because I knew that she was going to be born the next day. And I was like, first of all, she's going to rip it off my face. And secondly, I know I'm gonna kiss that baby like crazy, and I'm gonna just like the baby's just gonna have like rashes all over its face. So I shaved it off, and then I still gave the baby rashes all over her face because stubble, it's just as bad.
Yeah, stubble's almost worse, dude.
Yeah. Because I remember after she was born, like I'm just like, and my wife's like, oh my gosh, look at her face, like she's all like swollen and red. Like,
Yeah.
whoops. Anyways, but yeah, that's great. So didn't say hi to me because Jason got fat. God damn.
No, honestly, I did not recognize you. I really didn't.
No, it's okay.
It was like equating it later. I just said, "Oh, he must have put on some weight." I just didn't recognize you.
Yeah, no. Before I was like almost too thin, and then yeah. Hey,
Well, that's what I.
I'm
That's what
getting
I.
old.
That's
I'm
how I
getting
kind
old.
of knew you as the super skinny,
Yeah.
tattooed out guy with the beard, and so I'm like, "Well, that's not him." So moved on.
That's hilarious. Well, at any rate.
Well, speaking of fat faces, if you ever see me again soon, I'm on a crash diet right now. I'm at the first week of it. I've got to drop down 25 pounds, or my doctor's putting me on cholesterol medicine. So all the desserts are gone.
It's funny because I actually am. I'm on now. This isn't well. I actually am starting a diet this week. I'm already like feeling like, oh my God, because I want to lose a bunch of weight. But I'm doing like an intermittent fasting type thing where I eat once a day, basically. And
There you go.
I'm from like 5 to 6, I eat, and that's it. And so I'm starting that this week. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh, that's savage. I do the intermittent fasting, but much more generous amount of time. I do it from 12 noon to 7, and have 2 meals, but they're very strict meals, and a little bit of a snack. But,
well, I'm going to see how it goes.
Just no sugar, no
yeah.
carbs. You know the drill.
Yeah.
And no cholesterol oriented food, no processed meat. So I'm dying for some bacon, but nothing I can do about it. Oh, no more sausage. Oh God.
Oh man.
I'm starting to feel better though, actually. So
that's good.
Besides the constant hunger.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I know I'm going to try to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this up in a really weird way. But so I went through a terrible, terrible marriage. Wasn't good. And I was married for 14 years. And at the very end, when I was trying to hold on, the ex wanted me to get a vasectomy. I didn't want to get one.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing it because I thought maybe it would fix things. It didn't, because a month later she filed for divorce. So now I'm out in the world again, mingling.
And took comic books and destroyed them.
Yeah.
You got kicked in the balls twice, my friend.
Yeah. So then when I ended up meeting who's my wife now, like right away, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going through the divorce. I have 2 kids. I got a vasectomy. So anyways, we end up, getting married, and she finds out that you can get a reversal, and she's Italian, and family is everything, big Italian family. And she found out that, we can actually, she basically worked it out. She's like, yeah, we can get a reversal. Cause she, at first, when we first started dating, she was like, I don't really want kids. But then after a couple of years, she's like, I want kids.
Yep.
So I ended up getting a reversal in 2016, right towards the end. And it didn't go well.
Oh boy.
It was supposed to last an hour or less, and it took 2.5 hours. There was a lot of problems. It was a very excruciating thing because it was local anesthetic, and I kept feeling it for like 2.5 hours. Every like few minutes I would feel it, and they'd have to give me another shot. So for 2.5 hours, I'm feeling them cutting me over and over again. And it was terrible. Then the healing process is supposed to be like a week. Mine took 6.5 weeks. It felt like if you ever get kicked in the balls, that cramp, that bad cramp, I had that
Yep.
for like 6.5 weeks, nonstop cramp. Like I'm like crying all the time, and like it was just not cool. It was a really terrible experience. But
Probably want to kill yourself at a certain point.
it was, I couldn't walk for weeks. It was just painful. So I didn't think it worked. And I refused to go get my stuff tested because I was like, if it didn't work, I could see myself flying to Rhode Island and killing that doctor. Like, because that's
I don't want to know, fucker.
yeah. And it came back positive, and like literally a month later, pregnant with who's my daughter Sienna now. So it worked. But the thing is after that, that's when I started gaining a lot of weight. And quick, and it's been really hard and frustrating. But I think I lost you. Did I lose you?
No, you're here. I unplugged when I went to the bathroom.
So anyways, that's I've gone to doctors and different things, and so I think something happened where it affected my testosterone and different things like that. So I'm basically doing tests and different things, and so hopefully things will turn it around and help. But it's been a frustrating thing, because it definitely like messed up with, I can tell, like, just even like in my own just personal life, I'm like, and plus also when I turned 40, things start changing, like, and so it's like right now it feels like an uphill battle, but it's frustrating.
Try 60, believe me.
Yeah.
40s are great.
Yeah,
that's just the first degeneration.
But see, that's why I'm like, I'm trying right now. I want to try to get myself in the best shape possible, and so been doing tests and different things and trying to figure out what the heck's going on. But anyway, I'm tired. I have 4 daughters. Like, people are like, dude, you gained a lot of weight. I'm like, yeah, I got 4 daughters, dude. 2 teenagers and
like you don't
2
know,
babies.
like
Yeah.
You didn't notice the mirror.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, fuckface.
Yeah.
But anyways, before we wrap this bad boy up, is there anything that you want to let people know, like anything that you're currently doing or working on, or where people can find you and see current work or whatever else is going on? And by the way, I love your Instagram, by the way, because you share a lot of cool art so people need to follow your Instagram.
I'm on the old school Facebook, and I'm trying to make an appearance on Twitter because I can't get anywhere in the NFT world if I don't. And that's my new current goal, is to build a career doing that. I've done 15 paintings that I've only shown 1 or 2 of them. And I've suddenly held back because I want to build up my presence on Twitter first, because apparently that's where all the NFTs hang out. And I'm trying to get known in Clubhouse too, because that's where all the other NFTs hang out. And it's difficult because it's that same old thing of who's an NFT buyer and who's an NFT artist, and so, and you want to be nice to everybody, but you're like secretly, not even secretly, because they're all doing the same thing. You're trying to attract buyers, not 10 million new friends, which is great when you're talking and having a nice conversation. But it's like when the PR part of it built, like you're suddenly at the bottom of something, an unknown, even though you're sort of known in other fields to a certain degree.
Yep.
It's like, oh my God, at my age, I'm starting again, So that part is a little daunting, but you can look for me on Foundation if you're an NFT person. I'm just starting there, and I'll probably be on some of the other levels next. So that's my new little career. And then I'm still doing stuff in animation, and I'm still doing my fine art. And if you're in Southern California, you can see my work at Sue Greenwood Fine Art. If you're up in Northern California, I'm at a gallery in Los Gatos called Whitney Modern, and also in Cambria at the Vault. And you search my name on the internet, you'll find 10 million things and you'll be lost in the rabbit hole forever, so it's out there.
And on Instagram, it's William_Wray.
Yes.
And it's cool. I think it's cool because you share a lot of like your work and then other art, and it's kind of.
And I try to be funny.
Yeah.
I like funny pages.
That's why I like it. It's awesome.
So it's entertaining, I mostly
Awesome.
just steal really cool shit from other people. It makes it easy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Jason.
thanks for joining me, man. And I really appreciate hanging out and talking with you. It was a really fun chat, man. And for everyone else, thanks for supporting the podcast. And we'll see y'all next time.
And good luck on that draconian diet. You can do it, man.
I'm trying.
All right.
See you, man.
Bye-bye.
You want answers? And the truth shall set you free. I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.